From space, Earth looks almost effortless. Blue oceans curve beneath drifting clouds. Storm systems turn with ancient patience. Nightlights trace the edges of cities like nervous veins across the dark. The planet appears complete, balanced, and serene, as if nothing here could ever truly fall apart. But that is the illusion of distance. Up close, Earth is not a place of stillness. It is a place of pressure. A place where families live one pay cycle away from panic. A place where a delay in shipping can change dinner. A place where a damaged port can ripple into a supermarket aisle. A place where the price of a gallon of fuel can decide whether a worker keeps a job or loses it. From a cosmic distance, the universe is indifferent. It follows gravity, motion, and time. But human life is built on something far more fragile: trust, access, and the expectation that tomorrow will resemble today. And right now, that expectation is breaking down. All across the world, people are asking the same quiet question: what is happening to this world? Why does everything feel more expensive, more unstable, more difficult to hold together? The answer is not one thing. It is many things arriving at once. War, inflation, housing pressure, job insecurity, technology moving faster than institutions can adapt. A future that feels less like a road and more like a narrowing corridor. The story begins with conflict. In 2023, the world recorded 59 state-based conflicts across 34 countries, the highest number since 1946. More than 122,000 battle-related deaths followed. Behind those numbers are broken cities, empty classrooms, and families forced to flee with whatever they can carry. Conflict is not only destruction at the front line, it is a force that spreads outward, touching food systems, trade routes, energy markets, and the daily routines of people far from the battlefield. That is why a war in one place can become a burden everywhere. A missile strike, a blockade, a disrupted shipping lane, a damaged pipeline, a closed border. Each event seems local until the consequences travel. Grain prices rise, fuel prices rise, insurance costs rise, delivery costs rise. And then the cost reaches the person who never chose any of it, the person standing at a checkout counter, staring at a receipt that no longer makes sense. The most visible sign of instability is displacement. In 2024, forced displacement reached a record 123.2 million people. That means roughly 1 in every 67 human beings on Earth had been pushed from home. Not because they wanted to move, because they had to. Think about what that means in practical terms. A child leaving behind a school desk. A parent leaving behind a key that may never open anything again. An elderly couple leaving behind a kitchen, a garden, a neighborhood, and the daily landmarks of a life. Displacement does not just move bodies across borders, it tears people away from the systems that make life stable. It turns homes into memories and routines into improvisation. And once that happens, everything becomes harder. Work disappears first, then security, then savings, then certainty. Refugee camps and temporary shelters are not simply places where people wait. They are places where waiting becomes a way of life. Where children grow up in instability, where adults search for jobs without address, without documents, without the sense that their future belongs to them. Whole years can pass inside temporary conditions that no longer feel temporary at all. This is the human cost of a world under strain. But conflict does not stop at the border. It reaches into the household. Because even where the guns are far away, the price of survival keeps climbing. Inflation is often described with charts and percentages, but people experience it in a much more painful language. They experience it as subtraction. A little less in the cart, a little less in the tank, a little less after rent, a little less at the end of the month. Food prices remain one of the most immediate reminders that global instability has entered daily life. The global food system may no longer be at its most extreme spike, but that does not mean families feel relief. Stabilization is not the same as comfort. A lower number on a chart can still feel high when wages are not moving fast enough to keep pace. For many households, every trip to the store has become a negotiation. Do you buy the fresh produce or the cheaper packaged food? Do you fill the cart or leave items on the shelf? Do you buy enough for the week or stretch it and hope? These decisions are not trivial. They shape nutrition, stress, health, and dignity. When food becomes expensive, families do not just spend more. They adapt downward. They cut corners. They skip meals. They rely on cheaper calories and less variety. The cost may look small in a report. In a kitchen, it feels enormous. Fuel does the same thing, only with movement. In June 2026, gasoline in the United States was averaging around $4.05 a gallon, while gasoline inflation was running far above the year before. That figure matters because fuel is not a luxury. It is the hidden cost behind commuting, deliveries, farm equipment, freight, and nearly everything that moves through an economy. When fuel rises, the burden does not stay at the pump. It spreads into the price of groceries, the cost of shipping, the operating cost of businesses, and the monthly budget of workers who have no real choice but to keep driving. You can feel this pressure in ordinary life. A mother who drives to work and then to pick up children. A delivery driver whose earnings are consumed by fuel. A contractor who cannot raise prices fast enough. A farmer who pays more to move product. A student who turns down one job because the commute costs too much. That is how inflation works in the real world. It does not appear as a single event. It appears as 1,000 small losses. And housing may be the hardest loss to absorb. Rent is where inflation stops being a headline and becomes a trap. In 2023, a record 22.6 million renter households in the United States were cost-burdened, meaning they spent more than 30% of income on housing and utilities. For millions, it was worse than that. Some households were severely burdened, spending more than half of everything they earned just to keep a roof overhead. When housing takes that much, life shrinks. Savings vanish first, then emergency money. Then the ability to repair a car, replace a phone, or handle a medical bill. Then the ability to breathe. A person can have a job and still live on the edge of eviction. A person can work full-time and still feel one bill away from collapse. This is what makes housing so powerful as a measure of hardship. It does not just reflect the economy. It defines it. And when all three pressures converge, food, fuel, and rent, people begin to feel trapped inside a system that offers very little slack. That sense of strain reaches the labor market too. Finding work has become harder to describe because on paper, the world may still show hiring, growth, and opportunity. But people do not live inside averages. They live inside local realities. They live inside the gap between what their skills used to guarantee and what employers now demand. For younger adults, that gap can be brutal. They graduate into uncertainty, apply to dozens of jobs, and often receive silence in return. They are told to adapt, upskill, and stay flexible while facing a job market that seems more competitive, more temporary, and more fragmented than the one their parents entered. For older workers, the fear is different. It is the fear of being pushed out too soon, the fear that experience will no longer be enough. The fear that one restructuring, one automation project, one wave of outsourcing, one software shift could erase a career that took decades to build. And beneath all of that is a deeper concern. If work is unstable, what happens to dignity? Work is not just income, it is structure, it is identity, it is proof of participation in the world. When stable work becomes harder to find, the damage is not only financial. It is psychological, it is social, it changes how people see themselves and what they believe they can still build. Then comes the next force, artificial intelligence. AI does not arrive like a machine in a science fiction story, sudden and visible. It arrives more quietly, embedded in software, logistics, customer service, design tools, manufacturing systems, financial models, and scheduling platforms. It slips into the machinery of modern life and begins deciding what is faster, cheaper, and sometimes what is no longer needed. That is why AI feels both hopeful and threatening. It can help solve real problems. It can forecast crop stress before food shortages deepen. It can help medical systems detect patterns earlier. It can improve logistics, reduce waste, and identify risks before they become disasters. In hunger monitoring, predictive systems are already being used to spot danger sooner. In conflict zones, satellite analysis can document damage where people cannot safely go. These are not abstract benefits. They are ways technology can serve human survival. But the same intelligence can be used with a very different priority. It can be used to cut payrolls, to remove workers, to replace human judgment with automatic decisions, to compress labor costs while leaving communities behind. That is the central tension of the AI era. Not whether the technology is powerful, it is. Not whether it will reshape work, it already is. The real question is who will carry the cost and who will collect the benefit. The International Monetary Fund estimates that AI could affect about 60% of workers in advanced economies. Roughly half may see higher productivity and better incomes. The other half may face lower demand for labor and downward pressure on wages. That means AI is not just a tool, it is a force that can widen the divide between those who own the systems and those who must live under them. By 2030, the World Economic Forum projects that disruption will touch 22% of jobs, with 170 million new roles created and 92 million displaced. That sounds like a future of opportunity, and it could be, but only if people can move into those roles in time. Only if training is available, only if access is fair, only if new jobs are not reserved for the already privileged. Because there is a dangerous possibility here. If AI raises productivity but workers do not share in the gains, then society may produce more wealth while ordinary people feel less secure. If machines do more of the work, but wages do not rise, then efficiency becomes another word for concentration. If factory lines become more automated, if offices become more algorithmic, if service work becomes more digital, then the economy may grow while the middle remains under pressure. And that pressure is already visible in industry. Around the world, robots are no longer rare. They are part of the operating fabric of modern manufacturing. Industrial systems now rely on machines for welding, inspection, assembly, packaging, and movement. They work with precision, scale, and consistency. They do not get tired. They do not ask for benefits. They do not strike. That is why companies adopt them. But efficiency alone is not the same as progress. A factory can become more productive while a community becomes more fragile. A logistics network can become faster while workers lose leverage. A company can reduce costs while entire towns lose the jobs that held them together. This is why the future of work is not simply about whether automation happens. It is about who prepares for it, who guides it, and who is protected from its worst effects. Because the real danger is not that machines will suddenly take over everything. The real danger is that the transition will be handled carelessly, that workers will be told to adapt without support, that displaced people will be blamed for not moving fast enough, that the benefits of new technology will be captured quickly, while the burden of adjustment is left to households already under strain. And in a world of war, inflation, and insecure work, that burden can become unbearable. That is why the question of AI cannot be separated from the question of policy. If societies want technology to reduce hardship, they will need more than optimism. They will need rapid retraining, real wage support during transitions, mobility assistance, and competition rules that prevent all the gains from flowing to a few powerful firms. They will need standards that make sure automation is used to augment people, not simply discard them. That may sound complicated. It is, but so is the crisis itself. A world where conflict disrupts supply chains, inflation eats away at wages, housing consumes income, and AI rewrites entire sectors cannot be repaired with slogans. It requires choices, hard ones, political ones, human ones, and perhaps that is the real center of this story. Not that the world is ending. It is not, but it is under strain from multiple directions, and that strain is reshaping what ordinary life feels like. A few years ago, many people believed the future would arrive gradually, with enough time to adjust. Now the future seems to be arriving all at once. Faster markets, faster disruption, faster automation, faster anxiety. Meanwhile, the same Earth continues to spin beneath us, indifferent to our deadlines. From above, the planet is silent. From below, it is full of questions. What happens when war becomes a background condition rather than an exception? What happens when rent rises faster than wages for years at a time? What happens when food, fuel, and housing all claim a larger share of the paycheck? What happens when work no longer feels like a path forward? And what happens when the most powerful new technology of our age is introduced into that already fragile world? Maybe AI will help. Maybe it will help predict famine, reduce waste, speed disaster response, and open new kinds of work that we can barely imagine today. Maybe it will make factories safer, services faster, and human labor more focused on the tasks that require judgment, empathy, and creativity. Or maybe, if we are careless, it will intensify the very pressures people already feel. Maybe it will concentrate power, deepen inequality, and make insecurity feel permanent. The answer is not written yet. That is what makes this moment so important. We are not watching a finished future. We are watching a choice being made in real time. Whether AI becomes a tool of relief or another engine of hardship will depend on what societies decide now. Who gets protected, who gets trained, who gets paid, and who gets left behind. From the silence of the universe, Earth looks whole. But in the human world, wholeness has to be built. It has to be defended. It has to be shared. And if we want technology to serve people rather than overwhelm them, we will have to guide it with the same seriousness we would give any other survival challenge. Build an AI safety net now.